One quiet night in an isolated forest region of Cameroon, a peaceful lake turned deadly for the surrounding communities. Entire households stopped breathing at the same time, cows and sheep collapsed where they stood, and sleeping villages never woke up. In the distance, the lake sat perfectly calm, reflecting the night sky as if nothing had changed at all. Some people who were still conscious began to run, unsure where to, just trying to escape. Confused, they stumbled through the darkness past neighbors lying motionless on the ground, unable to understand what had just happened and unable to help them. What happened that night to cause such unimaginable horror? If you've spent time on this channel before, you already know that we're about to uncover something very unsettling. Tonight, we're exploring one of the rarest natural events to ever happen in human history. This is the story of the Lake Nyos disaster in 1986. Now, to understand what happened, we need to first look at the region in general. Lake Nyos lies deep in the mountains of northwestern Cameroon, and reaching it requires hours of travel on dirt roads that lead through dense forests. The lake itself sits inside a deep volcanic crater surrounded by vast hills and valleys, where small farming communities have lived for generations. This area is extremely remote, with limited connection to the outside world. The lake is not especially large, roughly 2 kilometers long, but it is unusually deep, reaching more than 200 meters at its center. The villages around the lake depended on cattle and local harvests, growing crops on the fertile volcanic soil that covered the hillsides. The lake was simply another part of the landscape, an ordinary body of water sitting inside an ancient volcano crater that had long since filled up with rainwater. 2 years before the events at Lake Nyos, something strange had already happened at another volcanic lake in Cameroon, about 100 kilometers to the south. In the summer of 1984, several people were found dead near the shore of Lake Manoun. Among the victims were passengers traveling in a truck along the road near the lake. The engine suddenly stopped running, leaving them stranded. What they didn't know was that the engine had stopped for a far more dangerous reason other than a mechanical failure. When the passengers stepped out of the truck, they collapsed within moments and never got back up. It was later determined that the oxygen near the ground had been displaced by a lethal amount of carbon dioxide. Without enough oxygen in the air, the engine simply could not continue running, and the people exiting the truck fell unconscious almost immediately after breathing the gas. Only 2 passengers survived, the ones who had been sitting on top of the truck. Because carbon dioxide is heavier than normal air, the gas remained concentrated close to the ground, meaning that their elevated position placed them just high enough where the air was still breathable. A total of 37 people died in the nearby area that day. Investigators eventually traced the source of the gas back to the nearby lake. But the idea that a lake itself could suddenly release enough carbon dioxide to suffocate people was difficult to understand. At the time, the mechanism behind such an event was still only theoretical. Researchers found almost no historical precedent. The only remotely similar event may have occurred more than 2,000 years earlier at Lake Albano in Italy, though even that explanation remains debated. In the months after the deaths at Lake Manoun, other volcanic lakes across Cameroon's highlands were examined. The region contained dozens of similar lakes which formed inside ancient volcanic craters, all gradually filled with rainwater over centuries, but these lakes were not as inactive as they appeared. Beneath the surface, volcanic activity in the region never completely stopped. Carbon dioxide was still slowly leaking upward through cracks in the earth, dissolving into the deep water at the bottom of some lakes. Normally, gases escape easily into the atmosphere, but deep lakes behave differently. Carbon dioxide can remain trapped in the deepest layers, which can quietly accumulate enormous amounts of gas under immense pressure far below the surface, while the lake above appears completely calm. Across Cameroon's volcanic highland region, many lakes shared exactly these conditions. One of those lakes was Lake Nyos. Compared to Lake Manoun, it was larger and far deeper. The steep volcanic crater dropped into water more than 200 meters deep, deep enough to trap vast amounts of gas under pressure. But in the mid-1980s, scientists still did not fully understand how these lakes behaved. The deaths at Lake Manoun had only recently raised the possibility that volcanic lakes could release gas in this way at all. No monitoring systems were installed at Lake Nyos, no instruments were measuring what was happening beneath its surface. Around the lake, life continued as it always had, farmers working, cattle moving through the surrounding fields, and small villages sat in the valleys below. But with each passing year, more gas accumulated beneath the water's surface, and at some stage it reached a breaking point. On the evening of August 21st, 1986, something disturbed the deep waters of Lake Nyos. Exactly what triggered the event that night remains unclear. Some researchers suspect a landslide along the steep crater walls. Others believe a sudden cooling of the surface water may have destabilized the lake's natural layering. Whatever the cause, the balance inside the lake broke. Water from the deepest part of the crater began rising rapidly toward the surface. Gas that had been contained deep below for thousands of years suddenly burst free. Scientists later estimated that more than 1 million tons of carbon dioxide had been stored in the depths of Lake Nyos. Much of it escaped within minutes. But the most dangerous part of the event was not the eruption inside the lake, it was what happened next. As the gas continued pouring out of Lake Nyos, it spilled over the rim of the crater and began moving downhill into the surrounding valleys. As stated earlier, carbon dioxide is heavier than normal air, so it was spreading slowly through the low terrain like an invisible flood. In the villages below, people began collapsing without understanding why. Many lost consciousness in their homes while sleeping. Others were found outside, lying along paths between houses or beside their livestock. In most places, there were no signs of panic or struggle. People had simply fallen where they stood. Entire herds of cattle collapsed in open fields. Birds and small animals lay scattered across the ground. The thick, invisible gas cloud continued moving outward through the night, settling into the lowest part of the landscape. The cloud eventually spread more than 20 kilometers from the lake. When morning came, the landscape looked almost untouched. Houses still stood, crops remained in the field, and the lake itself sat quiet again inside its crater. But across the valleys below Lake Nyos, entire communities had fallen silent during the night. Some survivors regained consciousness hours later, waking to a stillness that was difficult to understand. In several villages, the few people who managed to wake up found entire households lying motionless where they had collapsed. One survivor, Joseph Nquain, described himself when he awoke after the gases struck. "I could not speak. I became unconscious. I could not open my mouth because then I smelled something terrible. I heard my daughter snoring in a terrible way, very abnormal. When crossing to my daughter's bed, I collapsed and fell. I was there till 9 o'clock in the morning, until a friend of mine came and knocked at my door. I was surprised to see that my trousers were red. They had some stains like honey. I saw some starchy mess on my body. My arms had some wounds. I didn't really know how I got these wounds. I opened the door. I wanted to speak, but my breath would not come out. My daughter was already dead. I went into my daughter's bed thinking that she was still sleeping. I slept till it was 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon. Then I managed to get out to my neighbors' houses. They were all dead. I decided to leave, because most of my family was in Wum. I got my motorcycle. A friend whose father died left with me. As I rode through Nyos, I didn't see any sign of any living thing. When I got to Wum, I was unable to walk, even to talk. My body was completely weak." By the time the disaster ended, more than 1,700 people and thousands of animals had died across the region. As the cloud moved through the valleys that night, the air simply stopped containing enough oxygen to support breathing. For the people inside the villages, there would have been no warning. Those who were awake might have felt a sudden dizziness, confusion, an overwhelming heaviness in the chest. Speech became difficult, coordination faded. Within moments, standing becomes impossible. But most people never woke up at all. By the time anyone could have recognized the danger, the valleys were already filled with the gas without any way to escape it. News of the disaster spread slowly at first. The region surrounding Lake Nyos was remote, connected by narrow mountain roads and small villages separated by long stretches of rough terrain. When the first survivors reached nearby towns, the reports were difficult to comprehend. Entire communities had collapsed during the night. Livestock lay dead in open fields. How on earth could that happen? Many of the survivors themselves were weak, dizzy, or temporarily unable to speak. When rescuers finally reached the area, they entered villages that were almost completely silent and devoid of any life. For investigators, the cause was not immediately clear. There had been no volcanic eruption, no explosion, and no visible contamination. The lake itself appeared calm and unchanged. But the measurements taken in the days that followed began to reveal the cause. Water samples from the depths of Lake Nyos contained extremely high concentrations of dissolved carbon dioxide, far more than would normally be present in a lake of that size. In the following years, scientists developed a system designed to prevent the same process from happening again. Long pipes were installed deep into the lake, allowing carbon dioxide trapped in the bottom layers to slowly escape in a controlled stream. The villages closest to the lake were quickly abandoned. Some survivors chose to relocate permanently, while others returned cautiously over time as safety measures were put in place. Even today, Lake Nyos still sits in the same volcanic crater where the disaster began. Its surface remains quiet, and the systems designed to release gas from its depths continue operating beneath the water. If you enjoyed the video, then subscribe and leave a like to help my channel grow. Would you have moved back into the area or stayed away for good? This tragic event shows how easily danger can exist inside places that appear completely ordinary. Nothing about the landscape suggested urgency. For years, the danger existed quietly beside the people living there, unnoticed and unquestioned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.